Millionaire's cruel stunt exposed. Waitress's hidden piano talent transforms party in an amazing. The clang of plates and chatter of hungry voices enveloped Sarah as she swayed gracefully through the diner, a warm smile etched on her face. For the regulars in this small Midwestern town, she was more than just a waitress, she was the heart of the place. But beneath the cheerful surface, an upheaval brewed inside her. Every shift meant balancing the demands of work with the weight of her mother's illness back home. Each plate she served an echo of the sacrifices she'd made. Each hour spent in the diner chipped away at the dreams she once had, the music that once poured from her fingertips now silenced. When the invitation arrived for Jason's extravagant party, Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. It was a direct affront to the small-town values that shaped her world. In her mundane existence, how could one even glimpse the lives of the elite mingling in their glittering world? Still, she pushed back those thoughts. She needed the money. The bills were piling up, and her mother deserved the best care a daughter could provide. Gritting her teeth, she accepted the delivery job for the night, the weight of her mother's spirit urging her onward. As she arrived at the mansion, the sheer opulence struck her: breathless crystal chandeliers, laughter that felt mocking, and the waft of expensive cologne burnt in her nostrils. Behind the grand facade, a circle of men, none more than 30, gleefully gathered, tossing bets like they owned the world. That was when she caught at Jason's callous wager, a challenge to the staff to reveal any hidden talents that could rival their wealth. Laughter erupted around her, each guffaw sending a fresh wave of humiliation crashing over Sarah. How could they so effortlessly belittle her existence? The juxtaposition of their privileged life against hers ignited indignation deep within her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but her heart raced now, not from fear but from something more electric. Beneath layers of doubt, a fragile determination began to unfurl. Yes, she could play. That inherited gift from her grandfather still thrummed within her, though long since buried. The idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. What if she challenged the sneering laughter with her own talent? No, what if she exploded that confidence into their arrogant, self-indulgent bubble? The thought, terrifying and thrilling, gripped her like never before. The janitor, weathered but wise, caught her eye as the tension swelled around them. There was something kind in his gaze, a flicker of understanding that urged her to act. "You've got fire in you," he said softly, his voice a grounding balm amidst a storm. That confirmation spurred her further, an ember ignited inside her with a desperate yearning to reveal her soul. However, a visceral fear gripped each passing moment. What if they still mocked her? What if she failed? What if she exposed her vulnerability only to face their ridicule? Would her mother understand that she had clawed back at her own dreams, that she was fighting not just for the bills but for her lost self? The ideas clashed violently in her mind, an emotional war that caused her breath to quicken and her hands to tremble. She could feel the walls closing in around her, the glittering facade of wealth so stifling as it danced with arrogance, and there she stood, the precipice looming ahead as she contemplated the leap into a chasm that might just reveal everything: her anguish, her talent, her very essence. Silence and anticipation filled the air, a haunting stillness woven with the chaos of uncertainty. Would she step forward into the unknown, or would she shrink back into the shadows of doubt? Everything rested on that pivotal moment. The silence thickened, a cocoon wrapping around Sarah, her pulse pounding in her ears. The laughter, vibrant and oblivious, faded into the background as her focus narrowed to the challenge laid out before her. No longer would she just stand as an observer to their self-indulgence. The thought of their mockery morphing into applause energized her. She took a step forward, the decision crystallizing within her. With each stride toward the grand piano gleaming in the corner, Sarah fought against the doubts gnawing at her resolve. Their sneers echoed still, but so did the resonant notes of her past, memories of her grandfather guiding her fingers. What did she have to lose? The weight of her mother's illness, the relentless tide of bills. These burdens felt lighter than the chains of silence that had kept her away from the keys for far too long. As she reached the piano, hesitation washed over her once more. She could feel the judgmental stares piercing her soul, yet amidst that discomfort, a flicker of exhilaration ignited within. She hadn't played in years, but the melodies danced at the edge of her memory, waiting for a chance to be resurrected. She placed her fingers on the cool keys, inhaling deeply, absorbing the moment around her, gulping down the lump in her throat. She let instinct take over. Without warning, she pressed down on the keys, cascading notes that sliced through the tension in the room. The music spilled forth, gaining momentum, vibrant and alive, as if the very air itself encouraged her. Surrounded by unfamiliar faces, she found clarity. Each note resonated not just for the audience but for her own tethered spirit longing to break free. With every chord, she released years of pent-up frustration and an ocean of dreams. She was no longer the scared waitress in a world of the elite, she was an artist reclaiming her voice. The laughter faded into focused silence, and she could see how the spectators exchanged glances, considerably struck by the transformation before them. As the tempo became more complex, her fingers glided over the piano with newfound confidence. This was her moment, one that transcended the boundaries of a wealthy party. She recalled the feeling of hope and joy as each measure swept her higher, pulling her further into the music. It became a conversation with every listener, a bridge that connected her heart to theirs, and with each note, she wove tales of struggle and triumph. But then came the sharp contrast. The shadow of Jason's wager loomed large in her mind. What if the applause turned to scorn? Would their cruel laughter overshadow her moment of liberation? With a deep breath, she summoned rage and resilience, channeling it into the melody. This wasn't just about her talent, it was about standing up to their arrogance, a truth that made every note sharper, every rhythm bolder. As she reached the climax of her piece, the audience stirred, tension shifting into astonishment. Sarah could see the disbelief reflected in their faces, the abrupt realization that their world was about to be altered. And then it happened, the sudden shift. The laughter that had once targeted her fled, replaced by something raw and expectant. Just as she opened her eyes to drink it all in, she glimpsed Jason, his expression teetering between anger and confusion, a telling sign of a privileged life threatened by a humble heart that dared to shine. In that surreal moment, Sarah realized she had crossed a line. The applause began to build, hesitant but genuine, a swell of recognition that vibrated in her chest. She was not just a waitress anymore, she was becoming someone, an artist, a woman fearless in her pursuit of identity and purpose. As her piece concluded, the sound faded into the stillness that followed, her heart pounding in tandem with the expectant hush. What if this moment marked the birth of a new chapter? Would she finally embrace the path carved by her talent, a road fraught with uncertainty but also endless potential? But beneath the crescendo of applause, one looming question remained: what would happen if Jason retaliated? And in those moments of silence, Sarah felt an unmistakable turning point as she braced herself for the storm that might follow her newfound courage. Sarah stood before the piano, the echoes of applause still reverberating in her ears, but a storm brewed in her mind. In a world where status often dictated worth, she had just crossed an unmarked boundary. The cheers invigorated her, yet they also ignited a flicker of dread. What would Jason do next? The crowd began to disperse, laughter resuming, yet the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers surrounded her like an invisible fog. She had engaged with their arrogance, had shattered the facade of their elite world, and now, retribution loomed on the horizon. With every step back from the piano, Sarah wrestled with conflicting emotions. The exhilaration of reclaiming her identity fought against the anxiety that clawed at her gut. She could feel eyeballs resting upon her, gauging whether this was an anomaly or the beginning of something more significant. She had only just begun to awaken her dormant self, but her triumph was underlined by fear and uncertainty. In a corner of the room, Jason stood with his arms crossed. There was a calculated smile on his lips that sent a shiver down her spine. He was never one to let things lie, and the brief glimpse of anger she spotted while she played hinted at a brewing storm. Her gut twisted at the thought of him belittling her in front of the guests, mocking her aspirations with the same disdain he had used before. Would he dismiss her as just a waitress again, or had her performance altered the dynamic at least slightly? Sarah's thoughts raced. If she were to embrace her talent fully, she couldn't let his arrogance stifle her growth. How ironic it was that she had faced her fears on that piano only to find another lurking just behind her. The realization made her pulse quicken. The world of hospitality had prepared her for confrontations with rude guests, but this felt different. Jason was not just a customer, he represented a social order that she had long been scared to challenge. She gathered her resolve, reminding herself of the rawness she had felt while playing how alive she had been, how every note was a step further into her identity. It was time to break free of the invisible chains and refrain from being bound by others' perceptions. Yet she needed a strategy, a plan that would allow her to confront Jason not out of fury but from a place of strength and maturity. As the excitement in the room dwindled, a thought crystallized in her mind. If they believed her performance was a fluke, that she could only shine in fleeting moments, then she had to show them otherwise. She could organize an event, something that showcased her talents more prominently, something that presented the full spectrum of her skills. But would she dare do it? Would she risk the accusations that were likely to come from Jason and others who thrived on the status quo? She navigated through the crowd, collecting her wits as her enthusiasm waned, grappling with burgeoning fears and exhilarating possibilities. Jason was now walking toward her, his expression unreadable but his intentions calculating. She didn't retreat, instead, she straightened her posture, preparing herself for whatever confrontation awaited. "A stunning performance," Jason said, his voice dripping with mockery yet layered with something else. Curiosity? Annoyance? Maybe he was evaluating her. She could feel the tension coiling between them, palpable, the air heavy like before a storm. "Thanks for the kind words," Sarah responded evenly, resisting the urge to crumble under his gaze. She felt her heart rise. This wasn't just about surviving his judgments, it was about thriving in spite of them. "The thing about talent," he continued, voice low, "it doesn't always guarantee success. You might want to think twice about stepping into a world you don't quite belong to." His words hit her, and for a moment, doubt seeped in. But as she looked past him and toward the guests still lingering, she remembered how profoundly she had captured their attention. A smirk formed on her lips as she held his gaze steady. "Perhaps, but talent is meant to grow. I'm not going anywhere," she declared, feeling lighter with each word, not just defiance, but determination. The challenge was now on the table, and with that realization came a surge of ambition. What was she willing to risk to confront Jason, to rise above his derision? Maybe it was time to put her ideas into action. Sarah smiled, knowing that behind every problem lay an opportunity. It was within her reach to turn the tide and truly embrace her talent and worth, but would she face the backlash? A new chapter awaited, ready to test her resolve. As Jason's expression turned icy, she could feel the shift. The stakes were intensifying. The time had come to face her greatest adversary yet, but what unexpected revelations awaited as she stepped deeper into this battle for her artistic integrity? The air between them crackled as Sarah held her ground, her heart racing with new conviction. Jason's smirk faded, replaced by an unreadable expression that challenged her to stand firm. She realized this wasn't just a confrontation, it was an opportunity to solidify her own identity. In this fight, she had to gather every ounce of her courage and creativity. In the back of her mind, the idea of organizing a performance lingered, building steam the way a melody does in the soul. Could she truly transform this moment of tension into a springboard for her artistic aspirations? With a deep breath, she let her apprehension flow away, replacing it with a fierce determination. "Jason," she started, voice clear and steady. "If you think I don't belong in this world, that means I have something to prove. Not just to you, but to myself." She felt a solidness taking root within her, fueled by a newfound clarity. Would this moment of struggle perhaps ignite a flair for artistry that had long been dormant? What did you expect from a waitress? He shot back, his tone sharp. That one performance was a fluke, an anomaly. Oh, I expect far more, she replied, the buoyancy in her voice surprising even her. I expect to grow, to evolve. And if you think that your words can keep me from realizing that, you don't know me at all. Her defiance was visceral, emerging from a place deeper than she had ever accessed before. The weight of their exchange shifted, as if the room had leaned in closer to catch every word. The other guests had begun to notice the escalating tension, and though Sarah felt vulnerable, she also felt empowered by their watchful eyes. This was a dance she wanted to lead, a rhythm all her own. Tension hung thick in the air, mixed with disbelief and intrigue from those observing. A part of her wanted to retreat, to hide behind the familiarity of her old self. But another, more vibrant part, pushed forward. And how many opportunities are you willing to leave untouched because they don't come pre-packaged with prestige? She challenged. Jason's demeanor shifted slightly, she noticed the flicker of surprise in his eyes. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated her biting back with such assertiveness. And why should he? For too long, she had been defined by her job, boxed in by his expectations. But was she now figured into a larger narrative, craving a voice, a story to tell? Sarah envisioned her performance, the collective gasps of admiration that had followed her melodies. If she could channel that energy into a show, into a night where her music became her message, it could redefine her relationship not just with Jason, but with herself. I will organize a showcase, she declared, feeling the very timbre of her voice shift as a wave of adrenaline washed over her. And I'll invite everyone, those who scoffed, those who doubted. You're welcome to come, Jason. But know this, it will highlight what I've been too afraid to share, the real me. The atmosphere tautened with a mix of inquiry and skepticism. Jason's eyes darkened, then brightened, as if she had sparked something unforeseen. You think it will change anything? His voice dripped with condescension. I think it will change everything, Sarah retorted confidently, feeling the ground beneath her stabilize, recalibrating both her ambitions and her voice. Each word ushered her closer to her calling, untethered from fear, yet, as challenging as this declaration had been, a glimmer of doubt remained. What if the showcase was a disaster? What if she fell flat before the same crowd that now buzzed in anticipation? Adventure and anxiety danced in sync, and she felt an exhilarating chill run down her spine. The stakes had never been higher. As Sarah turned away from Jason, the weight lifting from her shoulders, she wrestled with the uncertainty that always accompanied stepping into the unknown. This was the moment a real transformation could flourish, but it would mean setting a course and executing her plan meticulously. That evening, she began sketching ideas for the showcase in her mind. Who could she enlist to help? What songs represented her journey? Each question sparked a sense of urgency as she resolved to reclaim her narrative, but as her determination brewed, she couldn't shake the feeling that Jason wouldn't sit idly by. The battle lines were drawn, but how far would he go to undermine her? With impatience, she knew she had carved a path through the thicket of anxiety, but what awaited her on the other side? The tension brewed thick, foreshadowing conflict that transcended her struggles. The spotlight was shifting focus, and she could feel it in the marrow of her being. A pivotal moment loomed just out of reach. How much strength would she need to tap into before facing the repercussions of her choices? The dawning realization covered her mind, opening a doorway to confront the fears buried deep within and the challenges that loomed on the horizon. Would she rise to fulfill her potential, or would she stumble before the proverbial finish line? The answers awaited, just around the corner. The glow of her small apartment was suffused with the warm, golden light of lamps and scattered candles, yet it felt cold against Sarah's racing thoughts. Each flicker of the flame seemed to echo the uncertainty swirling in her mind. She paced, every step a reminder of the audacity she had just displayed. The promise of a showcase hung heavily in the air, mingling with apprehension about its execution. Would it transform her life, or would it become another point of mockery? Her small kitchen table became her battlefield. She reduced it to chaos, a notebook strewn with lyrics, old napkins filled with ideas, and remnants of hastily devoured snacks. This disarray mirrored the tumult of emotions she felt. Each song she jotted down was a heartbeat, each lyric an affirmation. Yet, as she scribbled, another voice whispered doubts. How could she, a waitress, dare to unleash her music into the world, especially after years of feeling like a ghost? The clinking of dishes from the nearby restaurant punctured her reverie, pulling her back to the present. Sarah had spent countless shifts serving drinks and appetizers to patrons who barely noticed her. How many sets of eyes had glossed over her existence? The thought stung. If she could captivate an audience with her guitar, perhaps she could finally be seen. Determined, she grabbed her guitar, traded the trembling awkwardness for burgeoning confidence. The strings felt familiar under her fingers. She began to play. Each chord resonated with her longing for validation, for recognition. Strumming gently, her voice emerged, slightly shaky but passionate. As she sang, she poured her fears into the melody, transforming vulnerability into strength. But the euphoria was fleeting. What if she faltered? What if this moment was simply an illusion, yet another reflection of her naivety? A dozen scenarios unfolded in her mind, spiraling into a cacophony of worries. Could she pull off the showcase without faltering? Would she have the courage to perform in front of Jason and others who had dismissed her in the past? Moments later, she pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, and hesitated. Her gut twisted at the thought of reaching out, but she knew she needed a community. She needed allies, people who saw her talent, not simply her stage fright. With a deep breath, she began sending messages, outlining her vision and seeking support. "You're organizing a performance?" Her friend Mia replied almost instantly, enthusiasm humming beneath her words. "I'll help however I can." Relief washed over Sarah. The camaraderie she so desperately craved was beginning to materialize. But beneath her excitement lingered the shadow of Jason. She couldn't shake the feeling that he wouldn't leave her celebration unchallenged. What if he spread rumors? Tried to ruin her reputation before it could even take flight? Anxiety tightened its grip, and she realized that no performance would be free of conflict. As the days melted into one another, Sarah dedicated herself to practice, her determination hardening into resolve. Every late-night session turned into an exploration of her own artistry, and with each chord, she recognized pieces of herself she had forgotten existed. Part of her was still terrified, still wrestling with self-doubt, but she was also evolving. The showcase dawned on the horizon like the first streaks of dawn breaking through a long night. Invitations sent, arrangements being made, she felt both exhilarated and terrified. She was stepping out from the shadows, daring to grasp what she had long thought unreachable. Yet a question loomed larger than any other: would the fear of failure paralyze her when it mattered most? As she put her guitar down, a new wave of determination surged within her. She could hear the whispers among her peers, the lingering doubts from Jason mixed with the burgeoning support of friends. How could she turn their skepticism into her strength? Some barriers could only be dismantled through confrontation. And before she knew it, a new passion began to ignite, a fierce desire to unveil not just her music, but the story behind it. The performance was becoming more than just a show, it was a battle for recognition, an assertion of her identity. But as the hour grew near, her composure faltered. Just as she felt she could confidently step into the light, her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Have you heard what Jason is planning? He's been telling people you're just a trend, that your performance will fail." The weight of those words crashed around her. With each reveal, the line between fear and determination blurred. Would she become a victim of someone's cruelty, or would this display of character unleash a power she had yet to fully understand? With her heart racing and the stakes rising, the time had come to confront the specter of Jason and to rise beyond mere survival. The night of her performance would not just be about showcasing her talent, but asserting her very existence. How would she prepare for the ultimate showdown? The day of her performance settled with a mix of anxiety and determination swarming Sarah's core. As afternoon slipped into evening, she experienced a profound shift within herself. For too long, she had operated in the margins, half recognizing her dreams but too scared to pursue them. Now, she stood at the cusp of change, her every thought igniting her will to push past her fears. She returned to the kitchen table, now a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. With her guitar resting beside her, she gathered the scattered remnants of her notes. She meticulously curated a set list, layering songs that illustrated her journey, the heartaches, the realizations, the strength she had built against the odds. This was no mere performance, it was a tapestry of her life woven into melodies, a declaration of who she truly was. As she prepared, the specter of Jason loomed large, a reminder of the adversities she had faced. She didn't just want to prove him wrong, she wanted to transform that urge into something constructive. She envisioned his sneering face, the way he thought he could dismiss her talents without a second thought. This fueled her with a newfound resilience. No longer did she see the showcase merely as a chance for acceptance, it became a platform for empowerment, a way to confront those who had doubted her in ways she never imagined possible. Hours before the performance, Sarah began to invite thoughts of triumph. She visualized not just stepping onto the stage, but owning it. Each song unfolded in her mind, the rhythm echoing in her heart as she imagined the crowd swaying with her music. No more cringing at the thought of judgment, she envisioned applause, encouragement that transcended her fears. But amidst the euphoria, realism seeped in. What if her performance bombed? What if Jason's words infiltrated the crowd, spurring a wave of disbelief? Would she be strong enough to face that possibility? Fighting to douse the rising doubt, Sarah sought solace in her newfound allies, friends who believed in her, who reminded her that the risk was worth it. "Mia, can we run through some of the set together?" she texted, the urgency of her request tinged with vulnerability. Within minutes, a response blipped in, "Absolutely. I'm on my way." When Mia arrived, she exuded an energy that seemed to envelop Sarah in warmth. They spent time revisiting the songs, practicing harmonies, and solidifying the flow of the show. The camaraderie and encouragement rejuvenated Sarah. It was as if Mia's presence imbued her with the strength she had so often sought alone. As they played, moments of doubt began to dissipate, replaced with flashes of clarity. Sarah discovered a hidden depth in her voice that she hadn't tapped into before, an unexpected power that seemed to rise from within. Each note reverberated not only through the room but within her soul. This was her moment, and nothing could undermine it, not Jason, nor any self-doubt. But as rehearsals wrapped up, a lingering question gnawed quietly in the back of her mind: was she ready to confront Jason should he show up? The thought both terrified and ignited her. Perhaps, just perhaps, his presence would be the very catalyst she needed to transform fear into defiance. With the sun sinking and shadows lengthening across her apartment, Sarah felt the pull of the evening draw near, a commanding force urging her forward. She grasped her guitar tighter, a talisman of her identity. Before setting cycles of dreams and fears into motion, would she stand on that stage as a broken dreamer or as a soaring artist? And as confidence warred with trepidation, Sarah had one last thought before the performance: how could she turn this moment from vulnerability into an unstoppable force that could redefine her reality? When she stepped into that spotlight, would she merely be a waitress, or would she finally claim her truth? The moment Sarah stepped onto the stage, the world transformed. The crowd's murmurs faded into silence, their anticipation palpable. This was no longer merely a showcase, it was sacred ground. Heart pounding, she felt the warmth of the spotlight wash over her, igniting an exhilarating cocktail of fear and elation. As her fingers brushed the strings of her guitar, the first chords erupted, heavy with significance. Each note reverberated with echoes of her journey, carrying the weight of her struggles and the strength of her newfound bravery. This was her moment to unveil her truth, not just to perform, but to reclaim her narrative from the shadows of self-doubt and Jason's disdain. Yet, as she began to sing, her voice wavered slightly. Not out of fear, but from the thrill of discovery. This was a part of herself she had buried for too long, now unearthing hidden depths she never realized existed. Each lyric flowed from her like a river, each song amplifying her spirit. As she navigated through her setlist, memories washed over her not of failures, but of small victories that were often overlooked. Between songs, the audience began to shift from passive listeners to participants, swaying, cheering, even singing along. Sarah felt the energy pulsate through the room, as if they were collectively shaking off judgment and inviting her past into the present. She caught glimpses of faces, some filled with admiration, others reflecting her own struggle and resilience. In that very moment, she saw Jason in the audience, the sneer replaced by a look of confusion. It fueled her fire. She was not just facing him, she was transcending him. The crowd's acceptance became her armor against the ghosts of her past. Yet even as she swelled with newfound confidence, shadows of doubt flickered at the edges of her consciousness. What if the next song fell flat? What if her final performance didn't live up to the roaring success she had built in her mind? Was it too late to turn back? These corrosive questions rustled within her as she moved to her final piece, the one she had written for herself, a reflection of her struggle and triumph. With every strum, the world around her faded. This song was her catharsis, the culmination of her passion and pain. As she sang, she poured her soul into every note, allowing vulnerability to transform into strength. It wasn't just about the audience, it was a conversation with herself, an act of profound self-acceptance. The final refrain echoed through the venue, leaving not a whisper of uncertainty in its wake. As she ended, the applause washed over her like a tidal wave, drowning her fears in a sea of triumph. She couldn't help but respond with a broad smile, a physical manifestation of the relief and joy surging through her, but just as the applause reached a crescendo, she noticed Jason edging toward the stage, an expression of disbelief narrowing his eyes. Time stood still. Would he taunt her again or, perhaps, acknowledge her talent for the first time? She took a deep breath, balancing herself on the precipice between confrontation and revelation. In that moment, Sarah realized she was at a crossroads. This performance was not just her debut but a weapon in her arsenal of self-discovery. She could choose to rise above the flames of doubt or let them consume her. As Jason approached, she felt a deadly calm settle over her. The time had come to face not just him, but the implications of her own success. Would she allow past wounds to dictate her present, or would she silence them forever? The answer brewed within her, fiery and resolute. As she stepped forward, prepared for whatever came next, a question ignited in her mind: could this confrontation be her final act of defiance against the person she used to be? Sarah stood on the edge of the stage, the raucous applause mingling with the rising tension as Jason approached. Each step he took felt like an echo, reverberating in the confined space of her mind. She had laid bare her soul just moments ago, and now the air crackled with the gravity of the impending confrontation. Would he applaud her newfound strength or attempt to drag her back into the shadows of her past? Drawing in a breath that tasted of both exhilaration and fear, Sarah steadied herself. It was essential now to anchor her resolve in the progress she'd made, to remind herself of how she had clawed her way out of self-doubt. This was not just a moment of vulnerability but a fierce declaration of who she had become. "Nice show, Sarah," he said, his tone deceptively light, yet it held an edge that made her pulse quicken. "Guess you think you've made it big now, huh?" The gathered crowd diminished into a blur as her focus narrowed on him. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind, and now it was unfolding with frightening clarity. How much did he really understand about the battles she had fought? Behind the bravado, Sarah felt an undercurrent of vulnerability pressing against the walls she had built. "You know, it's funny," she replied, her voice clear and steady, surprising even herself. "I didn't do this for your approval. I did this for me." The crowd's energy shifted, a collective intake of breath. With those words, she could almost taste the power of her revelation. It wasn't merely about proving herself to Jason or even to anyone else who had doubted her. This was a reclamation of her narrative and acknowledgement of her worth. An uneasy silence hung in the air, and she watched as Jason's expression morphed from disdain to a flicker of bewilderment. She saw the gears of thought moving behind his eyes, a sense of realization breaking through. "What happened to the girl I used to know?" he muttered, more to himself than to her. Yet, Sarah could hear the echo of a familiar judgment resonating beneath the surface. "The girl you knew?" she countered, an ember of fury igniting within her. "She's not coming back. I've grown beyond your definition of me." As she spoke, clarity strengthened her resolve. Here, in this moment, she genuinely believed it. The murmurs of the audience grew, swelling into a background chorus of support. They were witnesses to her transformation, and their energy fortified her stance. Within her, a new identity was crystallizing, not the shy artist weighed down by another's expectations, but a woman unafraid to stand her ground and speak her truth. "You think this is just a stage? Just singing for fun?" she continued, pushing the words out with urgency. "This is a lifeline, my lifeline. You've tried to drown me, but look where I am now." His brow knitted slightly, and for the first time, her piercing gaze seemed to cut through his armor of arrogance. It was a small victory, yet a victory nonetheless. She saw the slightest crack in his facade, and a wave of satisfaction coursed through her. Stepping back, she focused on the crowd instead of Jason, her heart still pounding with the aftermath of confrontation. "This is what it means to rise," she declared more emphatically, reveling in the palpable connection they shared. "To learn, to grow, and to be unashamed of your story." As she stepped away, a surge of energy filled her, a mixture of fear and exhilaration pulsating through her veins. She had shifted something fundamental within herself, a belief that the past could no longer dictate her worth. Yet, beneath that triumph lingered a darker thought. Would this change be enough to keep Jason, her past, at bay? As he shifted, the tension hung in the air, making way for a stillness that felt almost fragile. Could real freedom come only with further confrontations? The path ahead felt uncertain, but it shimmered with the promise of undiscovered strength. What would her next move be now that she had grasped the weight of her past yet found it slipping away? With resolve tightening in her chest, Sarah was drawn into contemplation as her world spun, preparing for every potential next act, for it would require more than just defiance to solidify her newfound identity. Where would this journey take her next? In the days following the confrontation, Sarah stewed in a blend of exhilaration and uncertainty. Her mind replayed every word exchanged with Jason, like a looping melody that matched her uneasy heartbeat. She had felt powerful on stage, yet now, alone in her apartment, she confronted the fallout of that power. Did it truly mark the beginning of her ascent, or was it merely a fleeting moment destined to evaporate under the pressure of reality? Each morning, as dawn crept through her window, the sunlight illuminated the piano she had brought with her from home. It sat in the corner, a silent testament to her past and a catalyst for her evolution. She remembered how it had once felt like a dead weight, a reminder of who she used to be, the girl who had played only for others, silenced by fear. Now it beckoned her, urging her to explore deeper. The following weekend, she took a courageous step, signing up for an open mic night at a local cafe. It felt like a ritual of sorts, one that would require her to face not just Jason, but her former self as well. Her fingers hovered over the keys as she practiced her new arrangement, a blend of original lyrics and the melodies that echoed her struggle. With every note, she felt a further distance from the girl Jason had known. In the solitude of her living room, Sarah immersed herself in the music, letting it pour from the depths of her experience. The process became therapeutic. Joy intertwined with sorrow as she wove her story into sound, each chord a declaration of survival. She discovered a knack for improvisation, a hidden talent she never recognized in the shadow of doubt. Her fingers danced on the keys as if guided by an unseen force. Yet, with every session, she couldn't shake the coiling tension around her thoughts. How long before Jason returned to exert influence over her? He had been the anchor to her insecurities. Wouldn't he sense the fissures in her new foundation? The open mic night crept closer, and the lingering question grew louder. Could she withstand the scrutiny of not just Jason, but herself? on the night of the performance, she arrived at the cafe surrounded by palpable energy, the air thick with anticipation. Strangers and familiar faces alike filled the room, their laughter mingling with the aroma of roasted coffee. As her turn approached, fear surged within her. The weight of her past loomed larger than the stage before her, but of the remnants of Jason's judgment that still chased her, not one would accompany her today. Stepping onto the stage, she gripped the microphone with a firmness that shocked her. The room fell silent as she began to play, lost in her music, weaving her journey of pain and empowerment into every note. The audience responded, transfixed, but she focused only on her melodies, losing herself to the rhythm of her truth. Where once she would have faltered, tonight she embodied strength. As she finished the last chord, a rush of relief flooded through her, a realization that she was more than someone's reflection, more than the girl who had spent years within confinement. Applause erupted, overtaking her self-doubts, and for a moment, she felt invincible, but moments of triumph often bear the weight of unexpected consequences. As she stepped off the stage, she caught a glimpse of someone pushing through the crowd. Her heart sank as she recognized the familiar silhouette. It was Jason, a smirk dancing on his lips. What new chaos would he conjure up in this moment of success? Would she have to confront him again, or had she truly severed the hold he had on her? Sarah braced herself, determination hardening within. The path ahead looked as uncertain as ever, but if nothing else, she was ready to confront whatever it might bring. Declare her strength again. To rise once more. The atmosphere in the cafe shimmered with anticipation as Sarah stepped off the stage, her heart still racing from her performance. The applause still echoed in her ears, a vibrant affirmation of her reclaiming her voice. She felt a sense of liberation wash over her. This was a victory over self-doubt, but now Jason had returned, shadowing her triumph with his presence. His smirk, so familiar yet repugnant, ignited a flicker of anxiety within her. She took a deep breath, drawing strength from the positive energy of the crowd and reminding herself that she had just stood before a room full of strangers, laid bare her soul, and drawn them in with her music. She was no longer merely a waitress, reduced to insignificance. She was an artist, fortified by her resilience. Impressive performance, Sarah, he said, his voice laced with feigned admiration. You really think this niche little gig is going to change anything? She narrowed her eyes, fueled by a determination that had flourished since their last encounter. It changed everything for me, she replied, her voice steady, unwavering against the tide of his condescension. And it marks only the beginning. His expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty momentarily surfacing. You expect people to take you seriously now? Expectations are irrelevant. I'm no longer seeking your approval, she stated firmly, feeling the weight of his past judgments crumble in the face of her newfound confidence. She felt empowered standing here, facing him directly for the first time. The crowd around them, still buzzing with excitement from her performance, began to eavesdrop. Their collective attention was a shield behind which she felt even bolder. They were a barrier against the echoes of his derision, forming a protective embrace that fortified her spirit. Look, Sarah, he pressed, shifting tactics. You might have gotten some applause tonight, but what happens when the novelty wears off? Your performance is just a moment, a fleeting spark in the shadows of the real world. The challenge hung in the air, an invitation to doubt herself yet again. But instead of faltering, she felt an undercurrent of strength surge within her, bolstered by every late-night practice, every ounce of courage it had taken to fight against her fears. The clarity of conviction now coursed through her veins. Jason, this isn't just a moment. It's the foundation of something greater, she declared, her heart pounding but steady in purpose. You've underestimated me, and I'm done allowing your words to define my worth. His eyes widened, an acknowledgement that she refused to be muted any longer. She seized the moment, realizing that her transformation was not merely for her own sake but also a statement of defiance, a declaration of her right to share her voice, her talent, and her aspirations with the world. In that exchange, she felt liberated. Yet, a lingering fear remained. Would he rally those around him to undermine her, focusing on disparagement instead of merits? But this time, she was ready. She had allies, friends who saw her growth, people who would stand by her side to celebrate her journey. "Sarah, you'll always be in my shadow, just another waitress with a guitar," Jason retorted, an attempt to reclaim the power he felt slipping away. "No," she countered firmly, "I'm the bright light standing on this stage, and you will not dim that light any longer." She stood taller, buoyed by the gratitude she felt for every friend who had supported her along the way. As she spoke, the crowd's murmurs grew louder, supporting her, rallying for her, filling the void his criticism had tried to consume. As Sarah walked away from the shadow of Jason, she realized that her identity was no longer tethered to anyone else's expectations. She had transformed the pain of the past into a framework of resilience and creativity, and entrepreneurial spirit intertwined with her artistry. Months later, as she prepared for her next showcase, a mini concert at the town square, she understood she had cultivated not just a talent but a community around her. As more people gathered to witness her reignition, she recognized a profound intimacy between her music and her audience. She no longer played to conceal her fears but to celebrate her journey, a vibrant celebration of a life reclaimed. Sarah had not only confronted Jason, but she had conquered the fear that had held her captive for so long. She had emerged not as a defeated waitress longing for recognition, but as a resilient artist, ready to carve her own path forward, securely standing in her truth. She could now look back on her past with understanding and transform it into a passionate pursuit, nurturing her music with deep confidence and undeniable competence. No longer just an echo in the corner of a lavish party, she was now a luminous presence, an artist fully realized. If you're inspired by Sarah's transformative journey and want to witness more uplifting stories, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like to help us reach more hearts and souls. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Comment your thoughts below. Let's spark a conversation about resilience and personal growth.